Today I want to talk a little bit about shame. I know, sounds super exciting, but I think it's important because I feel like the word shame in my mind used to always be attached to the word ashamed. Like I'm ashamed of things I did in my 20s, which I think we would all agree we've done a lot of things in our life that we're ashamed of. Like I am forever grateful to the fact that social media didn't exist for me until I was pretty much out of college and grad school. Feeling ashamed and having that kind of worry about things like, oh, I don't want to do that because I don't want to be that. Oh, I don't want to be embarrassed about that. Right? That keeps us in line kind of. And there is some level of shame that I think is almost healthy. And just hear me out. It's what prevents us from breaking the law all the time or maybe hurting other people. And I know a lot of you are thinking, well, Katie, I wouldn't want to do that anyways. I'm just saying for some people, it's the fear of shame or embarrassment from other people that will keep them from doing things that could be hurtful or harmful. And so in some ways, shame can be a good thing. And it can also, kind of keep us in line or keep us in check. However, again, that's just a very small amount of it, just enough to keep us honest, right? However, when shame becomes chronic, becomes something that's like so pervasive in our life that it's like palpable, right? We can like feel it. It's everywhere. It's like throughout each and every day. That's when it's a problem. When the shame is, we feel ashamed so frequently that we will start to believe that something must inherently be wrong with us, that we must be broken in some way, that all the bad things that have happened to us, we were so deserving of it, right? Because something's wrong with me. And I'm unfixable. I can't tell you how many people reach out all the time saying, I think I'm unhelpable or unfixable. And that's born out of shame. And one of the most common causes of shame is actually trauma. And that's kind of why we've been talking about it so much, right? Because when we're traumatized by someone who we care about, meaning like a mother, father, family member, maybe even a babysitter, or just someone else in our life that was supposed to be a caregiver, someone that we thought we could trust, or someone supposed to take care of us, right? When we're hurt by someone like that, we can struggle to make sense of it because it doesn't make sense. Why would someone in our family or someone who's there to take care of us or love us, why would they do something hurtful, right? Instead of understanding, hey, that person is a bad person and they're doing bad things and I don't trust them and I shouldn't be around them, right? Instead of that response, we have this response where we're like, I must have done something to cause it. They're supposed to love me, so maybe I brought this on. I must have done something to trigger this, right? We try to make sense using ourselves and blaming ourselves. And it's through that blame that shame is born, right? Something must be wrong with me. That's why they did this. There's no other way to explain it. And that's the story that we keep telling ourselves. And I did a podcast recently, and I think it'll actually come out after this video, but with this woman, Jessica, who works at a treatment center. It's the APN Lodge in Colorado. She was talking about how the brain really loves to be correct. And that was such a profound statement because how I'm always saying your thoughts aren't facts. Just because you have thoughts and you have more thoughts about something, that's not proof and that those aren't facts. But because we have them repeatedly, right, we start to try to believe them and our brain tries to make it true because the brain likes to be right. And so if our brain starts to believe something must be wrong with me, that's why this keeps happening, it's going to seek out more experiences, more situations, and more proof, more unhealthy thoughts to help continue feeding this quote unquote correct belief. It's incorrect, but what it believes is true. Does that make sense? And so in doing so, our brain's going to seek out people who have very similar attributes to the person who abused us. We're going to maybe seek out relationships in general, friendships, romantic ones with, people who have that treat us in a similar way. And we're going to continue to tell ourselves a story over and over that we're not lovable, we're not enough, it's always going to be this way. And in a way, it's like we almost self-sabotage or like create our own reality around it, for better, for worse. And so anyways, I just wanted to talk about that because I thought that was such a powerful statement, and it so deeply applies to shame because our brain wants to prove itself correct, and so it's going to seek out things to maybe really end up hurting us, but it proves it to be right. And then it's like, aha, I told you this was correct, or I told you this was a threat. I also believe shame can develop when we keep hurting ourselves with past things that we're ashamed of. I believe that happens a lot for many of us as a result of drug or alcohol addiction, or gambling addiction, shopping addiction, eating disorder behavior, self-injury behaviors, suicidal attempts or thoughts or anything. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. And the reason I believe this turns into, that shame or toxic shame or whatever you want to call it, is because instead of admitting, first of all, I know it's really hard to admit we have a problem if we're having addiction, but instead of understanding, hey, I have this problem, I'm going to try to work on it, which again, I know is difficult. It's the first step for a reason, right? Admitting that you have a problem. But instead of working to process it through, we take those experiences, those things that we've done that we wish we hadn't, and we beat ourselves up with it over and over and over, telling ourselves these stories of the bad things we've done, so much so that ashamed feeling becomes chronic and turns into, full-blown toxic shame. And I would even say that anxiety feeds into this, because I personally, these memes speak to me, those memes that are like no one, and it's like me at night, and it's like, remember that thing you did 10 years ago? Why does our brain do that? I had that struggle too, where when I'm already feeling stressed out and having a rough day, I lay down to go to bed at night and my brain replays all the times I've acted like an idiot. It's like, remember that time that I don't even know, like that you drank more than you expected to and said that stupid thing to one of your friends that she forgave you for and it was no big deal. However, you were embarrassed later and you regretted it, right? I can replay, and I don't even know. I mean, it's like, I don't even want to get into it because some of it's I'm embarrassed of still, but those are stories that I could tell myself over and over and over and over again. To what end? Just to make me feel worse. And I don't understand why that happens, but I can tell you how to get out of it. And it's something that I will get into that in a minute. But anyway, I'm just saying that I think a lot of this shame can be born out of these things that we've done. And instead of allowing ourselves to be like, yeah, I fucked up and that was uncomfortable, move on, we just keep telling ourselves that story on repeat. And again, kind of to prove our brain right? We keep doing it and doing it and doing it and saying it and saying it and saying it until we're struggling then with like toxic shame feelings. Okay, just checking my notes. So what do we do? Now, the first thing that we have to do when it comes to shame is figure out the root cause. And I know a lot of you are like, well, it's that stupid thing I did a long time ago because I keep telling myself about it and I wish I didn't do it, or it's that addiction that I have, or it's the trauma from my childhood. Yes and no. Yes, part of it, like I said, can be those stories we retell ourselves, but it's not actually the thing that we did or the thing that happened to us that is the root of the shame. Just hear me out. I know that sounds weird, but hear me out. So I did something stupid. I got too drunk at this party and said something to my girlfriend I wish I hadn't, okay? And that was like, you guys, like so long ago. I don't even know why I still beat myself up about it, but hello, so nice. But anyways, so let's take that kind of an example. It's not just that is causing me to feel even shittier about it today. It's that rumination. It's the repeat of that story. And it's the things that I tell myself about it, that I'm stupid, that no one's going to like me, that I'm never doing enough, I'm not good enough, right? There can be these like repeat messages or these really unhealthy beliefs that we have about ourselves. And that is where the shame is born. That's where the shame really comes from. Because think about it, like if I had done that and then my friend was like, I don't know, I was drunk too, I don't even remember. That's the scenario. Don't worry about it. If I'd let it go and was like, okay, I won't worry about it. You said, don't worry about it. Wouldn't that be awesome if someone's like, don't worry about it. And you're like, I won't. Imagine that. But don't worry about it. Move on. And I just moved on. That wouldn't be a shameful experience for me. I wouldn't ruminate on that and beat myself up about it later. It's in that ruminating and beating myself up that the shame is born. Does that make sense? Are you following? And so figuring out the root is going to be key. And it's really hard, but it's totally possible because that root is actually, and I know you're going to hate this, but it's actually usually like 90% of the time, maybe more, from childhood, meaning that there are some patterns in the way that we have either talked to ourselves or someone else has talked to us, or maybe we were even told like through our family dynamic that it's not okay for us to say certain things or act in certain ways, right? There are these patterns throughout our life that we are so used to, like I call it like family dances. We know that music and we know those steps and we're so used to it, we can just keep doing it in our sleep. And we take that into adulthood and we continue to do it, even if it's harmful, right? Even if that pattern of behavior, that dance, as we're calling it, is something that makes us feel like shit. We just perpetuate it because we don't know another dance. I don't know any other steps. All I know is the Macarena. That's all I can you imagine? That's all I can do, right? And until someone teaches us new steps to take, we'll just keep telling ourselves that unhealthy stuff. Like, I'm not lovable. I'm not enough. No one's going to ever want me. I'm too stupid. I'm too lazy. I'll always be alone. Those are just some of the most common ones that I hear. And so recognizing those patterns, that's how we really get to the root. And it might take a minute. It might take some therapy before, because I'll be honest, when I was in therapy for 3 years at college and then I came home for Christmas, it was like after I'd done a lot of deep work and I'd been really doing that icky stuff that you really hate and you don't want to do and you like push back. I've been doing that stuff in therapy. And I'd realized all these patterns. Like, my family doesn't like to argue. So when people yell, I have a really hard time. And I do either the shutdown or the lash out. And there's like no in between. And it's really messed with my relationships in my life. And so realizing that, when I went home, I saw it playing out. And I was like, oh, no. I don't want to do this dance. I don't do this stuff at Down Dance anymore. I tell you what's happening. I talk more clearly. And it was different. It was hard. And if I didn't sleep well or felt extra stressed, I'd pull back into it and I'd do the same thing. And so just be compassionate and patient with yourself as we try to identify some of these shame, like almost like shame breeding grounds, these patterns that aren't helpful for us, and why we keep having those nasty messages that we tell ourselves over and over again. Is this making sense? I hope so. So anyways, that's really how we work to fix it. And then, so once we have the root, right, we've recognized these patterns of the Macarena dance we don't want to do anymore, then what? Then we have to do the stuff I always talk about, using bridge statements to move some of those shame-filled repetitive thoughts into a healthier, happier place. Remember, bridge statements aren't positive statements. It's like, instead of me saying to myself, Katie, you're such a lazy sack of shit, I would say, I'm open to the belief that I might be being just slightly too hard on myself. Maybe sometimes I can get some things done. Maybe, right? It's these maybes, these possibilities. I'm open, even if it's just, I'm open to thinking differently. I don't think differently, but I'm open to it, right? Those are those bridge statements. We have to think of actually building a bridge between, nasty self-talk island and like, oh, isn't it so lovely? I always only think good things. Nobody only thinks good things, but I'm just saying. Right, we have these two islands and we're going to build this bridge between them. Those first few chunks of bridge, they're not going to be anywhere near positive, but they're also not going to be totally trash talking negative. They're going to be kind of in this like open to change space. So pay attention to some of those common thoughts that you have. Like, I'm so stupid. Why did I do that? Those things. And let's try to be open, maybe, to some new thoughts. And then, so we have bridge statements. Then the second way to work on it, I know a lot of you are going to cringe, but group therapy can be really healing. If trauma or addiction or eating disorders, any of the things I talked about, if you have a past or a present with those things in your life, group therapy can help you learn how to show yourself some compassion, because you're going to offer it to someone else. I know you will. I see it all the time. So many of you are in groups right now and you're like, someone shared a story and man, it was so brave of her. She was so vulnerable. And I'm like, did you share a story before? Well, yeah, but I'm like, don't negate what you did while you offer it to someone else. So being in group can not only help us be reminded we're not alone and we're not crazy for thinking this way, but it also like flexes that compassion and understanding muscle. And I'm just here to tell you that as we flex it and work it for other people, we can start to feel it ourselves. I think that's really key, especially when we're trying to like untangle ourselves from shame. And then the third and final is, I don't remember. I have to look at my notes. Hold on. Inner child work. Of course, you guys would be so lucky if I forgot that one. But inner child work is really key here, because if the shame patterns or the trauma occurred when we were younger, we're going to have to do some repairing there and having some of those conversations back and forth to our inner child, whether it's through letter writing, whether it's through conversations we have while looking at a photo of ourselves at that age, whatever it is, or however we can tap into that child of ourselves. We all have an inner child. They're very active. Sometimes we're just like letting them run rampant without any parental control. And so the sooner we can try to tap in and have those conversations, the sooner we can maybe understand where we're coming from remember what it was like prior to a traumatic event or before the shame thoughts had gotten so deeply embedded in our brain that it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction, right? It can be really helpful, not only, helpful, but also healing, to get that conversation going, to do some of that work, so that, again, we're kind of working on that root and healing the root of the shame. Yeah, I know that's a lot to take in, but it's just been something that's been on my mind, and something I've been thinking about, because I think a lot of shame is based in fear, and fear and shame like feed off of each other, and then we don't talk about it and we don't do anything to feel better about it, and it just ends up, it's like turning, it's like a snowball, right? It just starts, or what I used to say growing up, everybody back home always says, turning a molehill into a mountain. We make it a much larger problem, right? Because some shame isn't bad. I know it's not comfortable, but some of it just keeps us in check. But when it becomes chronic, we know how uncomfortable that is when you're trying to go to bed and your brain is just going, or you're just even sitting at work and your brain is just spinning with all the nasty things it can think about you and things that you've done. And I'm here to tell you that it can get better. I still work on it personally, but it can get better. And I would love to hear your thoughts, your feelings, things that you've learned about it, or ways that you've worked through it in therapy. Let me know in those comments down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.